So, if I told you that in the 1950s, the absolute most reliable piece of medical technology for a human pregnancy test was a live African clawed frog, you'd probably think I was completely joking.
Oh, I mean, anyone would. It sounds absurd.
Right. But today we're diving into this massive encyclopedic stack of research that basically proves this humble, simple pond dweller that you think you know is actually a biological superhero. Like this deep dive is going to take everything you thought you understood about frogs and just totally dismantle it.
It really is a phenomenal collection of source material we have today. And, well, it starts by dismantling our assumptions on literally page one, because the way we culturally categorize these animals is effectively a diagnostic illusion.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading through this research, my mind was blown right out of the gate regarding a distinction I've made my entire life. Like the difference between a frog and a toad. It turns out that difference just doesn't actually exist.
No, it's a total biological myth. Scientifically speaking, all toads are frogs. They all belong to the same order Anura.
Wait, really? All of them?
Yep, all of them. We just decided culturally, to call the bumpy, dry ones toads and the smooth, moist ones frogs. But it has absolutely zero basis in their actual evolutionary history or their taxonomy.
Wait, so when I point at a dry, warty amphibian in the garden and confidently declare it a toad, I'm just like basing that entirely on vibes.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there is a specific taxonomic family called Bufonidae that biologists refer to as true toads. But even then, the physical traits are wildly inconsistent. You have smooth-skinned, wet-looking members of that true toad family, like the Panamanian golden frog.
Which is actually a toad, even though it's called a frog and looks exactly like a frog.
Exactly.
So if our basic naming convention is that entirely made up, what else are we missing? That's kind of the mission for today's deep dive. We are going to look at the bizarre evolutionary machinery hidden right beneath their skin. Because honestly, these creatures are chemical warfare experts, extreme survivalists, and crucial barometers for the health of the entire planet.
Yeah, and to understand how they achieve that status, we have to look at how they move. I mean, their physical anatomy is staggering.
It really is. I was looking at the breakdown of their leg musculature in the sources, and their main leg muscles make up over 17% of their total body mass. Like, think about that for a second, 17%. But looking at the diagrams of how the bones and tendons are structured, I have a question. Is their back leg basically built like a loaded crossbow?
Yes. Your crossbow analogy actually captures the physics perfectly.
Mm.
What's fascinating here is they have evolved a literal catapult mechanism, and it solves a major biological problem for them.
Which is what exactly?
Well, muscle tissue alone actually cannot contract fast enough to launch a frog the distances they jump. I mean, they are essentially breaking the theoretical limits of their own biology
So how do they cheat the physics of their own muscles?
by using their tendons as organic springs. So when a frog prepares to jump, the primary leg muscle contracts, but the frog essentially locks its leg in place. This stretches a specific tendon that is wrapped really tightly around their ankle bone.
Okay, so they hold all that immense tension.
Right, they hold it, and then when they leap, the latch releases, that tendon snaps back, releasing all its stored energy in just a fraction of a second, and it produces an acceleration that far exceeds what normal muscle power could ever do.
But just the sheer violence of that catapult action, I mean, wouldn't snapping a biological spring that hard just shatter a normal skeleton?
Oh, it absolutely would, which is why their entire skeletal system has been radically modified over millions of years just to handle the shock. Like they are completely missing ribs.
No way. No ribs at all.
No ribs. And the lower bones in their legs, the tibia and fibula, are actually fused together into a single, highly reinforced bone. And most incredibly, their tail vertebrae have fused into this rod-like bone called the urostyle.
Oh, right. The sources mentioned the urostyle. That sits hidden inside the pelvis, right?
Correct. It acts as an internal shock absorber. So when they land from these massive explosive leaps, the urostyle distributes the kinetic energy across the pelvis, so their spine doesn't just simply snap in half.
That paints such a different picture of them. Like, we always picture them sitting lazily on a lily pad, but they're actually built for high-stakes, explosive survival. And the sources point out that this specific catapult adaptation changed the course of their history about 66 million years ago, right around the time of the Chicxulub asteroid impact.
Yeah, the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. It was a global catastrophe, obviously, but it inadvertently set the stage for the frog's golden age. Because following the impact, The massive dinosaurs that heavily grazed and trampled the flora were suddenly gone.
Right.
And this led to a sudden, wild resurgence of dense, complex global forests.
And the frogs, armed with their built-in crossbow legs and shock absorbers, were perfectly equipped to take over that new vertical real estate.
Exactly. They took to the trees. They underwent this massive, rapid evolutionary diversification, adapting to almost every niche in these new canopies, and they essentially conquered the globe.
Okay, so the adult frog has this incredible, highly specialized catapult skeleton, but a tadpole swimming in a pond doesn't have fused leg bones or a Euro-style shock absorber. So how do they physically construct that complex machinery midway through their life? Because I have to admit, I had a total misconception here. I always just thought a tadpole was a baby frog, grows some legs, loses the tail, boom, frog.
That is a very, very common misunderstanding. But a tadpole and a frog are not simply juvenile and adult versions of the same body plan. They are fundamentally different creatures sharing a single life cycle.
Wait, so a tadpole and a frog aren't just baby and adult versions of the same thing? They're basically two entirely different animals sharing a single life cycle.
I completely agree with that framing. A tadpole is primarily an aquatic herbivore. It breathes through gills, it operates on a cartilaginous skeleton, and it has a very long, tightly coiled gut designed specifically to slowly ferment and break down algae and plant matter.
But an adult frog is a terrestrial carnivore. It has a bony skeleton, lungs, and a super short intestinal tract meant for processing animal protein. So how do they bridge that massive biological gap?
Through a totally grueling process. It's driven by a massive flood of a hormone called thyroxine. During metamorphosis, the animal undergoes a cascade of programmed cell death, which is called apoptosis. And the frog actually stops eating entirely during this period.
Because its stomach is basically out of commission.
Because its long herbivore gut is literally dissolving inside its body and physically reorganizing itself into the short intestine of a strict carnivore. It's an incredible metabolic feat. Even the bacteria in their stomach undergoes a massive shift.
Like a completely new microbiome.
Yes. It transforms from an aquatic, plant-digesting microbiome to one that can break down insect exoskeletons and fat. It even resembles the stomach bacteria of a mammal.
It's like trying to rebuild a slow-moving diesel tractor into a high-speed sports car engine and doing it in 24 hours without ever turning the engine off.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
And they just sit there, fasting, while their lower jaw transforms into a predator's mouth, their eyes migrate higher up on their head, and their nervous system gets completely rewired for stereoscopic vision. It reads less like a natural growth process and more like a sci-fi horror story of complete self-reconstruction.
It is a total teardown and rebuild.
Yeah.
But as extreme as that sounds, it is standard operating procedure for frogs. If you want to talk about truly extreme survival tactics from the source material, we need to look at the wood frog.
Oh man, the wood frog. This little frog lives way up in the Arctic Circle. And when winter comes, it doesn't just hibernate in a warm cave deep underground. It lets itself freeze solid. It essentially turns into a frog-shaped ice cube.
Right, and under normal biological circumstances. Freezing solid is a death sentence for a complex animal.
Right, because water expands when it freezes. So I would imagine that as the water inside a living cell turns to ice, those jagged ice crystals would just puncture the cell walls and shred the tissue from the inside out.
That is exactly what usually happens, which is why frostbite is so incredibly dangerous to humans. But the wood frog has evolved a brilliant biochemical workaround. As the temperature drops, their liver goes into overdrive and floods their vital organs with massive, highly concentrated amounts of glucose.
Like blood sugar.
Right.
So they turn their blood into biological antifreeze.
It's actually a cellular dehydration tactic. The glucose acts as an osmolyte, so it essentially pulls water out of the frog's individual cells. At the same time, the frog produces special nucleating proteins in its blood that encourage ice to form outside the cells.
Oh, wow. So the ice crystals form in the empty spaces between the cells rather than inside them, preventing the cells from rupturing.
Precisely. Ice still forms under their skin and fills their body cavity, but the dehydrated glucose-packed cells of the vital organs are fully protected. Their heart completely stops beating. They stop breathing.
No way.
Yeah, brain activity ceases entirely. To any observer, they are clinically dead. They stay in that state of suspended animation for months. Then spring arrives, the ambient temperature rises, the ice melts, their heart just spontaneously restarts, and they thaw out and hop away.
I mean, if human medicine could replicate that, we'd be traveling to other galaxies right now in cryosleep. It's true biological stasis. But, this raises a fascinating point from the research. You would think that with all these incredible adaptations, catapult legs, self-reconstructing bodies, cryo-freeze survival frogs would basically rule the world. But
Mhm.
they're actually incredibly vulnerable, right?
They are. I mean, they are primary predators of insects, but they're also a crucial low-level consumer on the food web. Birds, snakes, fish, mammals, even giant spider frogs are on the menu for nearly everything,
Wow, yeah.
which puts an incredible amount of evolutionary pressure on them, particularly when they are in their most defenseless stages, which is as eggs and tadpoles.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the sources mention that this intense vulnerability to predators forced them to adapt bizarre nurseries. What did you find on that? Because some of the parenting strategies in this research are the most intense I have ever heard of.
Oh, absolutely. The defining example of this is the gastric brooding frog from Australia, though tragically, it is now believed to be extinct. So, the female gastric brooding frog would fertilize her eggs externally, and then she would turn around and swallow them.
Wait, she would eat her own fertilized eggs. How does she not just immediately digest them?
That is where the biology gets truly bizarre. The eggs, and later the hatched tadpoles, secrete a chemical called prostaglandin E2, and this chemical essentially acts as an off switch for the mother's stomach. It completely inhibits the production of gastric acid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her stomach ceases to be a digestive organ and physically transforms into a womb.
So she just stops eating for the entire gestation period.
She stops eating for 6 or 7 weeks. And as the tadpoles grow, her stomach inflates so massively that it actually collapses her lungs.
You're kidding. How does she breathe if her lungs are collapsed?
She is forced to rely entirely on absorbing oxygen directly through her skin. She just sits there, heavily pregnant in her stomach, breathing through her skin until the tadpoles undergo metamorphosis inside her. Then her esophagus opens up and she regurgitates fully formed, tiny juvenile frogs.
That is insane. Why go to that extreme? Why evolve to turn your own digestive tract into a nursery and collapse your own lungs?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to the sheer danger of the environment. The size of the water body drives this parental care. Large bodies of water lakes and big ponds are absolute death traps for frog eggs. They're teeming with fish, diving beetles, and aquatic predators.
Right, so the evolutionary pressure to keep offspring alive drove many species to get their eggs out of those big ponds at all costs.
Exactly. Which brings us to the strawberry-poisoned dart frog, who took the nursery entirely out of the water and up into the trees. The level of micromanagement in their parenting is staggering.
Oh yeah, the sources detailed this. The female lays her eggs on the dry forest floor. And to keep them from drying out, the male stands guard, and he literally carries water in his cloaca, his specialized lower pouch, to spray on the eggs and keep them damp.
And the parental investment skyrockets once those eggs hatch.
Right. Once they hatch into tadpoles, the mother steps in. She lets the tadpoles wiggle up onto her back. Then she climbs high up into the forest canopy and searches for bromeliad plants.
Those are the plants with the overlapping cup-like leaves.
Exactly. They catch tiny, isolated pools of rainwater, so she deposits her tadpoles into these tiny arboreal pools one by one.
By doing this, she isolates them completely from the predators in the ponds below. It's a brilliant decentralized nursery. But of course, it creates a new problem.
Starvation. Because these little leaf pools are so small, there is no algae or detritus for the herbivore tadpole to eat. So the mother has to memorize the location of every single tadpole she hit across the canopy.
Just incredible spatial memory.
Truly. And she returns to each little bromeliad pool regularly, backs into the water, and lays unfertilized eggs simply as a food source for her babies so they don't starve.
It is an astonishing display of resource investment. But of course, not every frog can carry its babies up a tree or swallow them. For the frogs that are out in the open, they need an active, powerful defense. Which brings us to chemical warfare.
Oh yes, the poison dart frogs are the quintessential example of this defense. They practice aposematism.
Right, rather than hiding, they advertise their extreme toxicity with vivid, bright colors, neon yellows, oranges, and reds. It's a biological warning sign designed to train predators to look the other way.
And they absolutely mean it. The sources detail the golden poison frog. This tiny animal has enough of a specific toxin called batrachotoxin in its skin to kill an estimated 22,000 mice. 22,000. But here is the craziest twist from the research. They don't naturally produce this poison.
Yeah, that is the truly remarkable part. If you raise a golden poison frog in captivity on a diet of normal fruit flies, it loses its toxicity entirely.
Because they actually synthesize it from their diet, right?
Exactly. They extract the raw chemical ingredients for their natural diet of specific, highly toxic ants and arthropods in the rainforest. They eat the poison, process it, and weaponize it in their skin glands.
Hold on, if they are eating ants that are packed with a toxin lethal enough to kill tens of thousands of mice, why doesn't the frog just die from its own lunch? How do they process it safely?
It comes down to a brilliant genetic mutation. Batrachotoxin normally works by attacking the sodium channels in an animal's nervous system. It forces those microscopic channels to lock open, which uncontrollably fires the nerves, leading to paralysis and massive heart failure.
It's like jamming a key into a lock and breaking it off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the golden poison frog has mutated sodium channels. The physical shape of their channels is slightly altered.
So the toxic key simply doesn't fit the lock anymore.
You got it. They're entirely immune to the very weapon they wield.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How does the chemical warfare of a tiny rainforest amphibian impact human life? Well, indigenous peoples in South America have understood and utilized this chemistry for centuries, carefully wiping the tips of their blowgun darts on the backs of these specific frogs to hunt game. But modern medical science is also deeply invested in this.
Oh, heavily. The diversity of chemical compounds found in frog skin is so vast and complex that biochemists often refer to amphibians as a natural pharmacy. For example, researchers isolated a chemical from the skin of a poisoned dart frog called epibetadine. It acts as a painkiller, but it operates on entirely different neural pathways than opiates, and it is roughly 200 times more potent than morphine.
Which brings us all the way back to the hook of this deep dive, the pregnancy test. I need you to explain how a live frog became a piece of human medical technology, because the mechanics of this are wild.
The frog in question was the African clawed frog, known scientifically as Xenopus laevis. In the mid-20th century, doctors discovered a bizarre biological crossover. If they took the urine of a woman who suspected she was pregnant and injected it under the skin of a female African clawed frog, the frog would react.
Wait, if the woman was pregnant, the frog would actually lay eggs within hours?
Yeah.
How does human biology trigger an amphibian to spawn?
It's all about hormones. When a human woman becomes pregnant, her body begins producing substantial quantities of a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG. This hormone is passed out of the body through her urine, and by an incredible twist of evolutionary fate, human HCG perfectly mimics the structure of the hormones that naturally trigger ovulation in the African clawed frog.
So the frog's body detects the human hormone, mistakes it for its own reproductive signal, and goes into overdrive.
Yes. And it provided the medical community with the first fast, reliable, and observable pregnancy test long before modern chemical strips were invented.
It's just incredible. We've seen how these creatures are absolute biological marvels. I mean, they turn their tendons into catapults. They survive being frozen solid by turning their blood into a cellular dehydrator. They rewrite their own digestive tracts, and they have provided humanity with revolutionary medicines and diagnostic tests. But despite surviving the literal apocalypse that killed the dinosaurs, the sources make it clear that they are currently losing their biggest battle.
This raises an important question, right? Because despite all their rugged adaptations, frogs have a critical biological vulnerability, and that's their highly permeable skin. They don't just breathe through it, they drink through it. This makes them incredibly sensitive environmental bellwethers.
Meaning they're an early warning system. If there are toxins, pesticides, or pollutants in the water or the soil, the frog doesn't just ingest it, it absorbs it directly into its bloodstream through its skin.
Exactly. And this permeable skin is also why they are succumbing to a devastating, globally spreading fungal disease called chytridiomycosis. This fungus specifically targets the keratin in the frog's skin. As the fungus feeds, it causes the frog's skin to thicken heavily.
And since they rely on their skin to breathe and regulate moisture, thickening the skin essentially suffocates them.
It suffocates them and disrupts their ability to transport essential electrolytes like sodium and potassium, eventually leading to cardiac arrest. Because of this fungus, combined with severe habitat loss and pollution, global frog populations are facing a catastrophic decline. More than 1/3 of all known frog species are currently threatened with extinction.
It is a staggering reality. Over 120 species are believed to have gone completely extinct just since the 1980s. That includes the gastric brooding frog we talked about earlier. It also includes the famous golden toad of Costa Rica, which completely vanished in 1989. When a population of ultimate survivors suddenly crashes, it's not just a sad footnote for wildlife enthusiasts. It is a massive, glaring red warning light on the dashboard of our planet's ecosystem.
Yeah, their decline is a direct, unavoidable measurement of the systemic health of our water, our air, and our forests.
We started this deep dive talking about the illusions of labels, how we comfortably categorize a toad as a toad and a frog as a frog, and assume we understand exactly how the natural world works. But biology is incredibly complex, and our assumptions are often deeply flawed. These creatures possess biological superpowers that allowed them to conquer the globe and outlive the mighty dinosaurs. They have successfully adapted to every extreme condition on Earth for the last 250 million years. So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over. If these ultimate battle-tested survivors are suddenly dying off in our ponds and our forests, what does their silence tell us about the blind spots in our own survival strategy?